can't fail this class.
Oh, don't sell yourself short, Mr. Coates. I truly believe that you can.
When I saw it in theaters last year, The Holdovers immediately became a member of my annual Christmas watch list, along with the staples like Elf, A Christmas Story, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, and the lesser-known, maybe even guilty pleasures like Fred Claus, Daddy's Home 2, Four Christmases, and Spirited. But The Holdovers had a different feeling to it and its narrative. So, in this video for the Borealis Company, we're going to take a look at how The Holdovers pulls this off with its sound design and its choices of recording audio. The moment I saw the trailer, I was immediately intrigued, just based off the way it sounded. I wanted to find the microphones that they used, but with my extensive 10-second research session, all I got was 1970s microphones. So, at least we have a decade confirmed. Payne was going for as authentic of a 1970s New England narrative as he possibly could. And frankly, this film feels like something fresh out of a time capsule in every regard. To use his words, it feels unforced and lived in, from the acting, to the camera movements, to, of course, the audio quality. The Holdovers follows a history teacher of a prep school who's tasked with watching the holdovers, or the boys who weren't able to go home for Christmas. That's the elevator pitch, but it's so much more than that, especially when you realize that the real holdovers aren't the schoolboys. Well, one of them for sure. And I think, now that it's on my mind, the fact that they're in a New England school with that kind of architecture helps make the audio a little more authentic because of the way it carries the sound instead of just absorbing it.
31 big fucking detention!
Son of a bitch, that's another detention!
But the story is oddly fitting for the aesthetic and form of the film, because by using the term holdover and really focusing on that concept, this is really a story about people who were left behind in the past, or just left behind in general. Not just the kids whose parents didn't come pick them up, but, for example, the history teacher, who has basically nothing to his name aside from the job title, while his peers went on to become highly successful in the academic world. And then there's the cafeteria lady, who lost both her husband and most recently her son, the latter of which died in Vietnam, making her the last surviving member of her direct family. But I digress with minor spoilers. If they said that they used 1970s microphones, originally I wanted to look up the most common kinds of 70s microphones, which I found to be the Neumann U47, AKG C12, and Telefunken ELA M251, among others. But I wasn't educated enough to really have a fair say on the impact these microphones had, although I'd like to someday. And it's not like you can show one of these to a sound historian and they'll say, "Ah, of course, this one is known as the Sound of Christmas." Because, look, these microphones were used everywhere in the 70s, and I'm pretty sure well into the 80s and maybe even 90s. So why do I particularly associate them with Christmas? And that's when I realized this goes much deeper than 50-year-old vintage microphones. I think it goes without saying, but nostalgia is very much a player in this film. I talked a little bit about nostalgia in my video essay on Unus Annus, but this is a different kind of use for nostalgia. This is a story told by a storyteller who's using current nostalgia in the present rather than developing nostalgia for the future. And I think that's why it works so well with Christmas. I don't know if this is because I'm a postal worker where we as a company are so busy during the holidays that if you ask for Christmas Day off, you're basically fired. But Christmas means something different, a lot different to me now than it did when I was a boy. And I'm not sure if it's a good thing or a bad thing. Rather, I just think it's different. As a kid, Christmas was exciting because you got presents and everyone was together and you were able to assign the meaning of Christmas lights and evergreen trees and potpourri as a certain time of the year being upon us that elicited a certain emotion and a certain feeling that you couldn't get any other time of the year. As an adult, it becomes more of just another snow day if you get snow. because we create other priorities and we get more agency to gift ourselves throughout the year. And Christmas Day becomes more of just an excuse to do that once a year. And that's a theme that a lot of Christmas stories pick up on, which is why they are typically such good family stories. They connect to kids because they're experiencing that magic, and it connects to adults because it reminds them of what that magic was like. So why not use that same logic to make sound remind people of a certain time, festive or otherwise? The nostalgia of the Holdovers creates an atmosphere of a time forgotten, kind of similar to the way Christmas narratives tend to focus on the relationship between the limitless wonder and beliefs of children versus the harsh, pragmatic, or even cynical wisdom of adults. Here's also something to consider. More often than not, Christmas stories are either remembered in select pockets of families, or they are absolutely timeless, both in the festive culture and maybe even the pop culture. That's probably why I associate that vintage sound with the holiday season. The films that came out during that time or replicate that time have stood the test of time. We still talk about Christmas Story and the claymation movies, even though they might have gotten a lot creepier since they came out, as part of the Christmas aesthetic or even the mythos of Christmas itself. We think about Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer or Frosty the Snowman more than we do Rise of the Guardians or Klaus or Arthur Christmas. And with that comes the affiliation of the old school sound and mentally transforming it into the sound of Christmas. Alexander Payne's choice to use vintage sound to tell a story that happens to take place during Christmas as a way to make it a Christmas story is one of the many things that makes the Holdovers so special. And instead of making it just an aesthetic, it becomes a strategic element to bring you back to a specific time and to use that festive sound to help you as an audience remember a time left behind using the nostalgia of Christmas, regardless of whether you were around to remember the atmosphere of New England in the 1970s, or you're someone who remembers the idea of the feeling of Christmas spirit, but not what it feels like to experience that feeling itself. Thanks for watching. If you like this, subscribe and check out some other videos on the channel where we tell stories, study stories, and change stories, including videos on whether or not epic movies are becoming endangered, or how my financial health changed after I changed the story I told myself. In the meantime, I'll see you in the next one, and happy holidays.
You are and always have been penis cancer in human form.